Okay, here we go. So, my name is Kate Wilson. Welcome to today's session. We're talking about getting certified as an S/4HANA Cloud Public Edition implementation consultant. And you may have heard recently that there's been something going around called the Reimagined SAP certification, which is now going to be using different tools, some of them including artificial intelligence tools. So we're just going to do a brief introduction to help you understand a little bit more about why things are changing and exactly what's changing with the certification. So in the past, we always did what were called theoretical certifications, which are basically multiple choice. And the tricky part with that, and being a software company, is that doesn't always test your knowledge of how to do things in the system that you're ultimately going to need to know how to do for your actual job tasks. It can test your knowledge of the system, but not whether or not you know how to do things in that system. So we are moving more towards system-based certifications or scenario-based certifications. So we'll talk more about what those mean. But basically, the gist of this is we needed to change things because multiple choice was getting to be a bit too outdated. Artificial intelligence is pretty much everywhere these days, and we're all using like ChatGPT and co-pilots and Siri and all of these things in our personal lives and now in our work lives. So it really makes sense for certifications to reflect that as well. So instead of having these multiple choice questions about things in the system, which we can test you on anyway as you're going through the learning journey for the certification, we're moving towards an actual practical, realistic certification. So SAP certification is supposed to validate your applied skills in the real world environment and verify actual job readiness, which of course, as we've already discussed, multiple choice doesn't always do that very well. So we're going to see actually two different types of certification exams, and we'll talk about which one that we are using for our S/4HANA Cloud Public Edition exam. But basically, both of them are meant to be much more practical. They're meant to be where tasks are actually simulating your actual project activities. So how do you actually configure and set up a system? How do you create roles and users and assign permissions and migrate data, set up an integration? How do you do a customization? So those are actual practical things that you'd need to be able to do in real life, especially to be an implementation consultant. And for some of the certification exams, they use this tool called Udemy. And this particular tool essentially has you kind of work with an AI exam proctor, if you will. And so this proctor is going to be based in artificial intelligence, so it's not a real person. And this proctor gives you kind of a scenario or a setup instructions, kind of a framework, and then you are essentially answering questions and responding to the proctor in whichever type of scenario that they've set up for you. So it's really testing more of your practical knowledge and actually being able to apply that knowledge in a real life scenario when someone's asking you questions. Because of course, when someone asks you questions about something that you've just learned, it always makes you think of it in a different way and really helps you even understand that information more. So that's really the reasoning behind this reimagined certification. It was already launched at TechEd last year, and so it was already launched for a couple of initial exams, a couple initial product certifications. We do not actually have ours live just yet for S4 Public Edition, so I'll give you more information on that. With your practical exam experience, we are going to actually focus on these system-based assessments. So for the majority of our suite of S/4HANA Cloud Public Edition training courses, they all are really focused on doing exercises in the system, right? So for each one of those courses, whether it's how to implement S4 for manufacturing or supply chain or sales or financial accounting or sourcing procurement, you're always going to find that you have practical exercises that go along with that course content in a real system, right? So if you've done those practical exercises in the real system, you'll actually notice that once you get to the certification exam, you might see some similarities between those system exercises and the actual certification exam, because we want to test you on things that we've taught you how to do already. So if through the practical exercises that go along with your training course, if we've taught you how to create a custom business role and a launchpad space and page, and again, migrate data, set up integrations, then that's also what we want to test you on in the certification exam. So we are going to be focused on these system-based assessments right now in this first wave of the release of these new exams. And it's actually open book. So if you've taken our certification exams in the past, you'll know that was this thing, this kind of lockdown browser that you'd have to download, and it essentially didn't allow you to do anything else on your computer except take the multiple choice exam. We don't do that anymore because the idea is in real life. Real life is an open book test, right? Real life, you're able to use resources if you have questions or you're confused on something. You do have a time limit. So the time duration is going to be different per each exam. There's a process that we go through to basically estimate what an appropriate time limit is. Then we verify that with an internal group of experts. So the time limit is going to be the one thing that you need to keep an eye on. So you can use open book, you can search through the help portal, you can use Joule for Consultants, you can use things to help you while you're completing the system-based assessment. But keep in mind, there's a timer running. So you need to be able to do all of those things in the allotted period of time. So definitely don't expect to basically just not do the system exercises at all, show up for the system-based assessment, and just because you know you can do the open book model, try to wing it from there. You definitely want to be doing those practical exercises first to really prepare yourself. And I'm giving you a hint here. A lot of those certification assessments are based on the practical exam or the practical exercises that are already part of your courses. Okay. And because you all have Learning Hub subscription, know that because you're in a live session, which requires a paid subscription. So because you're in this live session today, I know that you have access to these practical systems that go along with your training course content. Okay. So for S/4HANA Cloud Public Edition, we largely are doing system-based assessments. For some of the other courses, so things that are more like sales oriented, for example, so there are courses that say positioning in the title. That usually means if I'm learning how to position something or sell something, right? Those are usually sales oriented. Those positioning exams tend to be more scenario-based assessments. So that's what uses this kind of AI avatar that you end up having ask you questions and you're responding in more of a sales type situation. But because we're talking about consultants doing things on the job, being a consultant, you're doing a lot of work in a system, we tend to focus on these system-based assessments. So you might see these at some point in time. However, these are not things that we have right now for our S/4HANA Cloud Public Edition. The whole suite of exams focus just on the system-based assessments. Okay, then there's basically we use a set of APIs or application programming interfaces that are embedded in the system. And so as you complete each part of the certification exercises in the system, these APIs are actually cross-checking and verifying and validating that you've done each part of the exercise. Now, the thing to keep in mind is it's really finicky about things like if you added an extra space to a title, or if you added a dash where it shouldn't have been there, or you didn't put a dash where it should have been there. So the one thing you want to be really a stickler about is making sure that if the exercise says, create a new custom business role, and the name of the business role should be XYZ plus your group number, make sure you do exactly what you see. No extra spaces, make sure that you have a space there if there is a space there, if there's a dash. The capitalization doesn't really matter, but it's more so about adding extra spaces or things in the names. Because what the API is doing is it's looking at, this user in the system, did you actually create this business role, assign the appropriate, say, business catalogs, and do the appropriate restrictions for those business catalogs? And that all kind of ties back to the name of the business role, right? So that's one thing I want to be really clear about because at this point I've tested the exam many times myself. And if you really, again, you add an extra space or don't have a space where it needs to be in names and titles, it will mark you as incorrect. So that's just one key thing to keep in mind. Be really meticulous about naming things exactly as they're listed in the prompt, so in the exercise prompts. Okay, so with this reimagined certification, it's basically trying to evolve with what we're seeing in our systems already. We're seeing Joule in basically being embedded across all of our SAP systems, including like Joule for consultants, becoming now a tool that consultants can use as they're working through implementations. So we're wanting these certifications to not stay old school, not stay multiple choice, but wanting them to evolve along with the evolving world of work that you're living in these days. Okay, let's talk about preparing for certification. So this is a screenshot of the learning journey format. Now, the learning journey format should look kind of the same as you've been seeing it in the past. If you have not checked into this learning journey, say in about a year, this is probably going to look different to you because we have sort of an updated look and feel of the format. Now, last year, a method of trying to build in this sort of practical test of testing knowledge in a system was this thing right here. So it used to be that you would go through your training courses. So let's say that you're just doing the classic certification to be an implementation consultant. You'd complete this course called Exploring Cloud ERP. Then you'd complete Implementing S/4 Public Edition. Then you have your practice system. So that's the Ready, Set, Practice. So you'd go through all of those exercises in the accompanying systems. Then you had to complete this practical test before you would be allowed to register for the multiple choice exam. Now, because the new reimagined system-based certification exam is not yet live yet, it's going to be live towards the end of January. So because it is not yet live, you're still going to see this listed in the learning journey as this practical test. That's not going to be required anymore because, of course, we've completely redone the certification so that it is inherently a practical test in a system for everything that you do in the certification. So this is no longer necessary anymore. Okay. You will still see it currently if we go into our Implementing S/4 Public Edition, our learning journey right here, and this is the master learning journey. I will send you this link in chat so everyone has it just in case. You'll see these two courses. You'll see this practice system. That practical test was taken away, and then now we have the certification here. Now, at this point in time, so ever since December 31st of 2025 of last year, you are actually not able to register for the certification exam right now. Okay. Again, that is because the new exam is not yet live. We still have a couple more weeks of testing before we're going to be ready to publish everything. So we're looking at the end of January, and formal communications will obviously come along with that. So you can see it here, but you cannot currently register to take that certification exam. It should show up at the end of January. And this session that we have right here, this live session that we're doing that talks about getting certified, this session is actually the beginning of like a 3.5 week series of live sessions that we have. So as soon as, if you participate in the rest of these sessions with me that accompany these two training courses that are part of the learning journey, I will let you know basically as soon as that new practical certification exam becomes live, because you will be with me. If you join the rest of these sessions, you will be with me through the end of January. So we will cover that. We will also do this Get Certified session at the end. Basically, these are like bookends. So we do one at the very beginning of the series, and then we do one at the very end. So at the very end of the series, we should actually have that system live and ready to go, barring no surprising issues come up. I have this list of live sessions here for you because this is it's a big course. It's a couple of big courses. The first one, Exploring Cloud ERP, really kind of sets the stage and introduces you to things like what's the difference between S/4 Public Edition versus Private Edition? What's the difference between Grow and Rise? It's really kind of setting the stage, introducing you to really important key topics. And then from there, we go into the core implementation knowledge of how to actually implement S/4 Public Edition. Now, what we have the majority of our consultants do is that you would need to then specialize in a line of business. So rarely are you going to have on an implementation project someone who's just a generalist in implementing S/4 Public Edition. You really need to have this foundational knowledge plus knowledge about the business processes in a line of business area. So the reason why I included all of these live sessions here is I just want to make it as easy as possible for you to find the live sessions. I also have a link here to a document that I will send you in chat. That's going to prompt you to download a PDF. And on that PDF, I believe it's page 2 or 3, you have the direct links to all of these live sessions again. Okay, I just want to make sure that you know how to join them, how to register for them, because this is the series of live sessions we're going to be doing for the next 3.5 weeks. And this is just a big course. It's a lot of information. And really, I think the live sessions, they're meant to be about 2 hours a day to accompany, to show you live demos in the system. I run all of these sessions myself, and I'm the course owner. So my goal is really to make sure that you feel as comfortable as possible, understanding the system, the capabilities, and also knowing how to do them yourself once you go through the practical exercises so you're adequately prepared for the certification exam. I see a couple questions here. Is this new certification approach also going to be the same for on-premise as for HANA? Basically, all of the certifications are being transitioned to this new model. The cloud certifications were transitioned first. I mean, really, the very first wave were the business technology platform certifications, because that was what was launched at TechEd last year. And then we're essentially going through waves of relaunching the rest of the existing theoretical exams and rebuilding them in the systems and using the APIs to check and verify that you've completed each exercise. So yes, this will trickle down to all of our courses eventually. And then how do I find and register for these live sessions? So please click the link that I just sent in chat to everyone. So it's the https://d.dam.sap.com. That link is going to prompt you to download a PDF. So if you click the link, this is what it looks like. If we save this, and you'll actually see that some of those slides are exactly the same as what we were just looking at. So I have the same slides in both because I want to make sure that it's easy for you to find how to register for these live sessions. I will also show you in the learning journey itself how to register. So this is that PDF document, and if you scroll down here, you see this information, and you see page 3 has these live sessions. Page 4 and 5 also include some information that we'll cover in just a second. And that information is to talk about your learning path depending on what your specialty is going to be. So let me come on back to my teaching deck here. So I think that answers the 2 questions about how to register for the rest of the live sessions. And then how similar is the exam to the previous practical test we had to complete in order to sign up for the certification? I would say it's very different because it's much longer. So you basically have a 3 for this specific exam. Duration depends on each individual exam, but for this exam, it's going to be about 3 hours of time, and you will end up having about 6 different pretty detailed exercises that you go through that are scenario based. So it's going to say something like, you're working on a customer implementation, you need to set up a custom business role for this type of a user. And so it's going to give you some general instructions, and then you go from there. You create the custom business role. Again, we provide things like make sure it's named with this exact title, again, so we can check it with our APIs. Assign these business catalogs and enter these restrictions. So I would say it's significantly more detailed than the previous practical test. Also, the practical test wasn't in a real system. And for our exams, you now actually have a real system. So essentially, we don't care how you do things, because often there's multiple ways to like create a business role, assign business users. There's multiple ways typically to do things in the system, in the real systems, whereas that practical test was not a real system. So you had to do it in a very specific way. Okay, let's keep moving forward because we've got a lot of information to cover. I'll make sure all the questions are answered, but hold some of those questions until we keep moving because we've got a lot more information to clarify. And then here's the link again for that PDF download. All right, so we've got 2 different learning paths for financial accounting, sales, and sourcing and procurement. And now that I'm looking at this, I see that I need to remove the 80 questions there in the 3 hours, because of course that was from the old theoretical exam. The information here about the links is still going to be relevant though. So basically your first the first thing that you need to be aware of is that you need to complete the learning journey that is specific to your line of business area with financial accounting, sales, and sourcing and procurement because their paths are slightly different than the other ones. So for, say, financial accounting, we would click this link. And it's essentially a combined certification exam. So it includes courses from the foundational knowledge, so the generalist learning how to implement S4 Public Edition. Then it goes into the detailed information about how to do everything related to financial accounting. Okay, this also is going to have a practical, so an in-system certification exam. So I just want you to be aware that that's why there's these two different slides here. You want to first go through the relevant learning journey. And then, of course, all of these stay certified or these certification links are going to be updated once we have the actual practical tests live towards the end of January. So these will all get updated with, instead of being multiple choice, they are going to be practical in-system tests. And as of right now, the partner organization offers this kind of extra 2 hour or so certification guidance session. This is completely optional. And unfortunately, only partners are able to join it. So you wouldn't be able to join or register for this if you're not working for a partner organization, a partner implementation company. I just wanted to put it here just so you have the resource in case you want to join it or in case you're able to. The partner organization also offers these go live experience workshops. So again, it's optional, it's not mandatory, but it is a really great way to apply your knowledge and actually go through sort of a simulated implementation. They basically simulate a very short implementation over the course of about a week. And then that gives you a lot more experience and hopefully helps you feel more comfortable before you're staffed on an actual implementation. Now, for everything else, it's a little bit different. So the other line of business areas, except financial accounting, sales, sourcing, and procurement, you're going to start with completing the learning journey for implementing S4 Public Edition. So basically the foundational one that just focuses on core knowledge. There is an optional certification prep live session that you can join offered by the partner organization. And then you'd go ahead and complete the certification exam, which is no longer 60 questions. It's going to be about 3 hours to do about 6 specific exercises. And I know that probably sounds like a lot of time for only 6 exercises, but once you get into it, they're relatively detailed and you'd want to take your time moving through the system, completing each exercise. And after you get that base sort of foundational level certification, then you would go ahead and specialize in a line of business. At this point in time, these don't have actual practical in-system certifications. They do have practical exercises. So they do have practical exercises that you can do in the system, and there is a live system for that. However, for these courses, you're essentially going to get a knowledge badge after you complete the rest of the course content. So that would include completing the multiple choice items that are part of the course. So it's not part of a certification, it's just part of the course. At the end of each lesson, you typically have to take some multiple choice questions to verify that you understand everything. And then, of course, you would do those practical system exercises, and then you get a knowledge badge. So it's just the process is slightly different for the line of business areas that are not financial accounting, sales, or sourcing and procurement. Okay. Just to clarify that for you, basically, I would recommend if you don't already sort of have background knowledge in a line of business area, talk to your manager or talk to the rest of your team and ask them what do you need basically to staff? Like, what are you expecting to need to staff on future implementation projects? Because as a project manager who's leading an implementation, they're going to be looking at what lines of business did the customer select on what's called the digital discovery assessment. So what was selected initially, that's going to be what we need to implement for them. Therefore, I need experts to represent the processes in each line of business area. So if that customer only selected what we call kind of like the core ERP, then that's basically just financial accounting, sales, and sourcing and procurement. And really, you can't go wrong with these because these are going to be a part of any implementation project. These other areas are usually the ones where, do they produce the products that they then sell? So then they're going to need supply chain and manufacturing, and they're going to need sales, right? So these other line of business areas are depending on what type of business that customer runs. So I would talk to your managers and ask them, is there a specific specialty that you'd recommend that I go into? Because what you're going to do after you understand the foundational knowledge of basically like, how do I migrate data? How do I set up a general integration? How do I create extensions or customizations in the system? How do I enter configuration values for a business process? Then you need to get deeply familiar with the business processes in one of these areas. Okay. So that's what you're looking at doing for your job tasks. All right. Your SAP Learning Hub subscription, which you already have, because if you didn't have one, you wouldn't be able to join these live sessions, gives you about 4 exam attempts per year. You can only use 3 attempts per a specific exam. So, like if you failed the first couple of attempts of, implementing S4 Public Edition, you'd only have 1 remaining attempt. And then that fourth attempt you could use for any other exam. Okay, so 3 attempts max per an exam, but in total you have 4 exam attempts per year. That goes for all SAP employees as well. You all have an annual Learning Hub subscription with the same 4 exam attempts per year. Okay, I'm going to pause here because I see some additional questions. Let's see. Did I understand correctly that currently I can still take the multiple choice test? No, you cannot take the multiple choice test. That closed as of December 31st in 2025. So the multiple choice test cannot be registered for any longer. That's completely shut down. That has to do with, the license to the company that supported those multiple choice tests. So that's not running anymore. And then without having passed the practical test. So again, no multiple choice tests anymore. Those are completely done now. And then practical test is only what we're doing moving forward. Now, it's not live yet though. So that's why I have this note here. The system-based certification exams for S/4HANA Cloud Public Edition, which includes just the generalist kind of core knowledge of S/4 Public Edition. It also includes the financial accounting system-based certification exam. It includes the sales system-based certification exam and sourcing and procurement. Okay, so those 4 exams are not yet available. They are in the final stages of testing right now. We expect them to be available by the end of January. And of course, formal communication will follow with that. Okay. Let's see, how many questions will the test include? If I'm remembering correctly, so I don't know about the sales, sourcing and procurement or financial accounting because I didn't work on those. But the one that I worked on for S/4HANA Cloud Public Edition includes, I believe, 6 exercises. Okay. And then within those exercises, there's more detail that goes along with it. So it's not like 6 exercises are not equivalent to 6 multiple choice questions. 6 exercises, we expect you to need up to 3 hours to complete those 6 exercises. So they're relatively detailed once you get into them. And then what's the passing percentage? We actually don't have that yet. I'll get the final cut score later this week. Not all questions carry equal marks because essentially for each question, we're validating on certain APIs. So you're probably, I don't believe we publish that publicly. So you're probably not going to be aware of the actual weighting of the different questions just because there's maybe one API checking something. So that's one validation check versus another assessment question or exercise, I should say, versus another exercise might have 3 validation checkpoints, and each of those are weighted slightly differently. We also try to weight the ones where it's like a little bit harder. So migrating data, that's a little bit harder than just assigning a business role to your user. So something like that's going to be weighted a little bit more. And then our playground systems still accessible that are relevant for the certifications? Yes, they are. So for our foundational course right here, which I'll send this link in chat again if you don't already have it. If you scroll down here, where you see the Ready, Set, Practice, that's going to give you the link to the practical assessment or the practical system. Now, I personally think it's a little bit easier just to go directly into the course because the courses will have their appropriate systems already mapped to them, whereas this just sends you to the general area where you'd have to keyword search and find the right system. So I'd actually recommend if you are working through this course, which, do these in order. So start with this one. This one does not have a system exercises with it because it's more high level information and it's much shorter. You see just the duration. This is like 5-ish hours. This is more like 12 hours. So there's a lot more information in this course. If we click into this course here, you'll see all of the units listed out. And if you scroll to the very bottom right here, under the level up your skills area, you see these two practice systems. So our practice system is only going to, or our certification system is only going to test you on the hands-on practice for implementing S/4 Public Edition. That means it's just an S/4 Public Edition system. It is not a central business configuration system. Okay, so we have two different practice systems. This is the one that is going to be most similar to the actual certification exam. And you can register for these practice systems at any point in time. You just click the link as long as you're logged in, select the enroll button, and it should process your enrollment within a couple of seconds or so, and then you'll get an email with access to that system. So these are the system exercises. This is not the certification exam. All right. And then a few other questions. I've completed the training and it says to earn a badge. What do you do next to earn a badge? So badges are usually earned through a certification. So again, at this point in time, we don't have the certification live yet. So right now, it's just sort of empty. Right now, it's not something that you can actually register for. If we go back to the main area where you could register for it, we just have go to details and you see there's this notice. This exam will be replaced with a practical exam by the end of January, so this button is grayed out. You can't actually register for the exam. So you'll need to wait a couple of weeks here until the end of January when this gets released, because at this point in time, we've got like a window of 2 or 3 weeks where nobody can register for the exams because the old one is done and we're just finishing and finalizing up the new one. So as soon as the new one's ready to go and published, you'll see that this Go to Certification Exam button becomes available for you to click. And the live sessions, I think, are very important to helping you understand everything that you've learned in the training course because it's a lot of information. It's a lot of text. For most of my live sessions, for the duration of most live sessions, I'm doing live system demos for the majority of them and talking you through how to actually go through each of these tasks for an actual implementation. So I would recommend the live sessions. And then will there be more line of business specific certifications coming up, like for manufacturing, supply chain, or warehouse management? That's a great question. At this point in time, we're just trying to get all of our current exams live. So that's something that we'd have to discuss in the future. I'm not sure. I can't fully answer that one right now. At this point, the focus is just to get our 4. So the foundational one that we're looking at right now, sales, sourcing and procurement, and financial accounting. We're just trying to get those live. Okay, and then so do we also get some kind of different certification or certificate after completing all the multiple choice questions in the learning journey, for example, for warehouse management? Now, for the learning journeys that don't actually have official certification exams, you get a badge of completion. I think at this point in time, it's called a knowledge badge. So you can still share those knowledge badges, but the knowledge badges, the graphic and the text on them is going to be slightly different than the actual certification badge. But of course, if that's all we're offering, then that's the only type of badge that you can get. So yes, it is a little bit different. And then I'm interested in a certification for S/4 Public Edition, not for implementation. Is there another option based on being a user? Oh, so being like an administrator, an admin in the system. I would actually say for if you were going to be an admin or sort of a super user in the system, you'd actually want to go through the implementation course. You could maybe skip down, like you could perhaps skip through the first couple of lessons because those are more about for the consultants understanding what the customer selected, how do we initially deploy the systems. But if you're going to be a user that has access to, say, central business configuration or a fair number of capabilities in the S/4 system, I'd actually recommend going through the core implementation course because there's going to be a lot of stuff in there that's relevant for you for managing the system. So you could probably start around, like you'd want to understand the system landscapes and release upgrades. So I'd start around Unit 3 at that point, if you're trying to understand this as sort of an end user using the system itself, but someone with more administrative capabilities. And there's not a certification targeted for that. The certifications right now just target someone who, say, if you were going through a positioning course, the positioning ones are targeted towards people in sales. And then these sort of learning how to implement courses are targeted towards our implementation consultants. And then are the same questions in each the same? Correct. Yes, they are the same assessment items for each exam. So if you fail the exam the first time and you retake it, you will see the same exact system exercises the second time around. And then, so for the new exam, do we need to schedule the exam like before? I've got some more information on that coming. We haven't quite gotten there yet. And then, let's see. Oh, some more detail from the other question. So as a sales representative, processing sales orders. So in that case, I would point you to, if you're more in the sales area, there is a couple courses for sales that are more talking about the business processes. In that case, I would just keyword search and I would look for S/4HANA Cloud Public Edition and sales. So you'd be looking at, this is the implementation, or this is the implementation learning journey. Let's see. I would say probably this one, maybe this course, or even again, in the implementation course, it does work through both how to configure the business processes, but it also covers how they work. So I think probably the implementation one might be really helpful for you as the sales representative. Okay. And then another question. BTPA practice system's not available. I can't help with that one because I'm not involved in that exam. If the practice system isn't available, they might just be refreshing it. Usually the refreshes happen over the weekend and they get them back up pretty quickly after that. So if it's not currently available, either all the user seats are full for the time being or a refresh is happening. But that's a different, because that's business technology platform. Okay, and then do we need a paid subscription to attend these sessions, or would partner free edition work? I believe your partner subscription actually gives you access to the live sessions, because if you can register and join this live session that you're in literally right now, then that means you have a paid subscription. Okay, so if you're in this session, you can register for and join the other sessions. Okay, question, if a certification is not there anymore, who can you contact to get information about the equivalent new certification? I would say the general rule of thumb is for all of our S4 Public Edition certifications, they are due to be released at the end of January, and actually quite a few certifications outside of S4 Public Edition are due to be released the end of January. You actually don't need to contact anybody because if you look at the information about the certification, you should see a message like this. So if you can't register for an exam, there's usually going to be a message that says this is going to be replaced. No exams can be scheduled at this point. It will open again once the new version is ready to go. All right. Next up, let's talk about how you would schedule the certification exam. Now, because our exam is not yet live, I will not be able to show you screenshots or how to register for it with our actual exam. So I'm using screenshots from one of the other exams that is live, which is for SAP Build developers. So the next time we run this Get Certified session, which is going to be in about 3.5 weeks, at that point in February, our exam will definitely be live. So I will be able to update all of these screenshots and we'll be able to actually look at it in the real system. But because we can't do that right now, we need to go off of these screenshots from a different certification. So basically, the first step is you always need to make sure that you're logged in to the learning.sap.com website. Otherwise, these buttons will not be available for you. So make sure you're logged in first. Then you'd click the Go to Certification Exam button on the certification exam page. So again, this is currently what our certification exam page looks like. We, of course, can get there from our learning journey. So if we're looking at our master journey right here for implementing S4 Public Edition, you see this is the path. So course 1, course 2, practice system, and then that's where you can see the certification. So if we do go to details, this button for us, not available. In real life, once this is live, it will become available for you. Okay, whoops, let me come back to my slide deck here. So we'd click this Go to Certification Exam button. Next up, before you take your exam, read and accept the privacy statement, just your usual privacy statement, need to confirm that. You'll also see that when you click into the Go to Certification Exam, that's pretty tiny, but you can see here, it's a system-based assessment, 2 hours. For us, we're gonna have 3 hours. So for S4 Public Edition, the general exam that I worked on, that's gonna be a 3-hour time limit for about 6 specific exercises, but you will see the duration so you'll know how much time you have ahead of time. It's also going to give you some information here about the maximum number of attempts. If you don't pass on this attempt, it's going to give you some more details there. All right. Then we would select this button, Start the Certification Exam. After you check this box, Start Certification Exam, to proceed. Next step, we need to click on the link right here. So it says certification exam. Hello, this would include your name. This exam expires in this number of hours, how many attempts that you have, and then here's the activity. So once you start the certification exam, your 24-hour countdown begins. Be sure to finish the exam before the time runs out. And then you'd click this system-based assessment link right there. All right. Now, once we click the system-based assessment link, you're going to see right here, it gives you the little description. Access includes system setup guide, guided exercises, and support. The steps, the practical system will open in a new tab once via the access button. As soon as you click this access button, that starts your timer for the duration of the exam. So that starts the timer of your 3-hour time limit. So before you click this access button, make sure you click the once the setup is completed, continue with the following attachment. So make sure you download the certification tasks list right there. That's just going to be a PDF. It's going to look very similar to the practical system exercises that are part of the course content. So again, I strongly, strongly recommend, especially for this exam, that you go through the practical system exercises because you will, number one, you'll get familiar with the format of that PDF document and the way that exercises are described and the information that's in them. Number two, you're going to get familiar with the system. Number three, the exercises in the certification assessment are going to be pretty similar to the ones that you see in the practical system exercises that are not part of the certification. Okay, so your best way to prepare yourself is to go through the practical system exercises. I would recommend at least twice. Okay, 3 times, 4 times, even better. Then we download this list. That's our PDF certification instructions. It says when you complete all the tasks, you can validate via the confirm completion. Okay, so we will click this access button that will then become or start the countdown clock of, for us, our 3-hour time limit. And then you're going to keep this tab open. So this tab is going to stay open while you are working in a different tab to do the actual system exercises, and only press confirm completion once you've actually finished every exercise in the system. Okay, so this is very different than what we used to have for those multiple choice assessments, where you would have that lockdown screen and you couldn't access anything outside of the one window that you were working in. At this point, you can basically have as many browser tabs open as you want. You're already going to have 2 browser tabs open. This browser tab that is basically tracking the duration, so it's doing the countdown clock of how much time you have left of your 3-hour time limit, where you access and open up the system. The system opens up in a new tab, and then you come back to this original tab to confirm completion once you're done with everything. So it may take a few minutes for your system to be provisioned and for the access button to become visible. So don't get frustrated if you don't see that button show up right away. Your timer will begin immediately after you click that access button. Okay. Next steps. The practical system opens up in a new browser tab. We'd recommend if you do have split screens or if you have two separate monitors, use split screens to easily navigate back and forth between the tasks that you have in that PDF document and the actual system itself. So this, of course, is a screenshot of an SAP build system. For us, you're going to have an S4 Public Edition system, no central business configuration. It's just going to be S4 Public Edition. All right. Now, to end your exam, keep an eye on your exam timer, okay? So remember that is going to be on the system-based assessment page. And that's going to tell you how many minutes you have left. You can see here it's 23 minutes left and 12 seconds remaining. As soon as you are done in the system, you will come back to this tab and you will say, yes, I'm going to confirm completion. It gives you a confirmation, a secondary confirmation. So I'd click confirm completion and then, yes, I absolutely want to confirm completion. Make sure to only confirm once you're done with the system exercises though, because you can't make any further changes after submission. Then you're going to get your results. The system-based assessments usually work pretty quickly because, again, it's an API check. So we're running a series of APIs in the background to validate the user ID that you were assigned. So you are assigned a user ID when you are doing the exercises in the system so we can keep track of each one of you. And that's typically why we also have you put the user ID that we give you in the titles of different things, like the title of your migration project or the title of your integration that you're setting up, or the title of a business role, or a custom space or a custom page that you create. Okay, so that's how we keep track of you. Those APIs are going to run in the background. They're going to verify, did you do all of these things? Remember, they're really, really specific about extra spaces and dashes and things like that. So if I have let me just open up my notes. So if I have something where it says like, create a business role with the name project-manager, and then maybe underscore with your group number, so your user ID number that we assign you, and the group numbers are like 6 digits long. So let's say it's three zeros, and that's the group number. If you did that, so if we said in the exercise, put an underscore, and you did a space, it's going to count that as incorrect. Okay? So you have to be really careful. My number one piece of advice, besides making sure you do the practical system exercises to prepare yourself for the actual certification exam, my other piece of advice is to make sure if the exercises say, this is the name for this business role, make sure you do it exactly the way that it's written. Because something simple like that is going to mark it as incorrect. That marks it as correct. That's just the way that the APIs work. They're looking for very specific things. All right, so allow some time for the review to be complete. It could take up to 15 minutes depending on how many people are also taking exams at the same time and how many things it has to process in the background. Once the review is complete, your results, pass or fail, will be displayed immediately. So for a pass, it would look something like this, and you would get a badge that you can then download and use in all of your social media channels or in your email. And then if you did not pass, it would say something like this. Unfortunately, you didn't pass the exam. You may not have passed because the 3-hour time limit expired, the passing score wasn't reached, or your certification window expired. If you still have attempts left, you can return the certification exam page and you can always try again. If you fail, I would absolutely recommend going back and doing the system exercises again to better prepare yourself next time. Because again, the certification exam is based off of the system exercises, okay? So if we go into implementing S4 Public Edition, if we scroll down here where it says hands-on practice, this is what if you fail, I'd recommend doing that again. So register for a practice system, do the practice exercises one more time, then go back and do your certification exam. I would bet that you would pass. If you've done these, practice these again, then go and do a second attempt for your certification. Okay, let's come on back here. Some tips for the system-based certifications. Again, make sure to use those practice systems and complete the exercises first before you attempt the certification exam. Close any unnecessary browser windows or applications that you might have open just to help you stay focused. just to not have any extra distractions, turn off Teams for your company or, shut down your email so that you can fully focus on this. Keep in mind that the exam is open book, which means that you can open up additional browser tabs. You can look up things in the help portal. You can go back to the training course content if you wanted to. You can do any of those things. However, there is that 3-hour time limit. So whatever you're doing that's open book, it needs to be done within the 3-hour time limit. And then make sure to review those certification task list before you actually start. So read through the instructions, get an idea of what's being asked of you to do in the system. I know there's always that when you start an exam, like the moment you start, you go, did I just forget everything that I learned, right? So take a deep breath, give yourself a minute. It's going to be very similar to those practice system exercises, okay? And then last, we still have our original stay certified concept. So what that means is that your certification is valid for 1 entire year from the date that you got your certification. All right. To maintain your certification in the future, we are going to make sure that in the future, we actually also have system-based assessments here as well. We haven't gotten there yet. So for the foreseeable future, I would say the next year, possibly 2 years, your stay certified assessments are still going to be multiple choice and things that you complete just in the learning website. So you can always check your certification status by logging into learning.sap.com. You go to the tab for My Learning. You'll see a list of things. So your activity, your practice systems, live sessions, subscription. You can then see your certifications. So you'll be able to see which certifications that you have. So in this case, it looks like we're up to date. And then if you select Manager Certification, you will see when a new Stay Certified assessment becomes available. Now, our Stay Certified assessments, they're about 10 questions. They're between 8 and 10 questions. They're multiple choice. They're pretty easy. They're much easier than having to let your certification expire and retaking the big exam all over again. So I'd really strongly recommend that you take those easy 8 to 10 multiple choice things to just renew and keep your certification status valid year over year. Now, the number of times per year that we release Stay Certified assessments depends on the releases for the actual product. So for S/4HANA Cloud Public Edition, we have 2 major releases per year for the product features, right? That means that we will publish Stay Certified assessments twice per year after each release. However, you actually only need to complete 1 of those assessments per year to maintain your certification. Okay, so only 1 Stay Certified assessment is required to maintain certification, and you can always check your up-to-date status by going to My Learning, Certifications, and Manage Certification. That will tell you when your Stay Certified assessment is due, and then that will give you the link to the most recent assessment. So basically, if we move through February, let's say that you don't need to take your Stay Certified assessment until, let's say, December of 2026, you can skip the February one that gets released because this due date is going to be, say, December 15th of 2026, right? And what will happen is initially, after the February release, we'll have a Stay Certified assessment. It will become linked here. Once we have our next release in August, the August assessment will replace the old February assessment. So the link here will only ever send you to 1 assessment at a time based on which release has most recently occurred. Okay, I just want to address these Q&A questions because these are kind of your frequently asked questions, and I think they might answer some of the questions that are in the chat. If you were already certified, so if you took the multiple choice certification and you still have a valid certification status, you do need to take the new certification, okay? We're moving everybody over to the new system-based certification assessments. You only need to do it once though, okay? Passing the new exam will not change your status because technically you're still certified based on the old theoretical exam. However, your badge will be updated to reflect this year's date. So let's say that you took the theoretical assessment in 2025. You do need to take the new system-based assessment to replace that. And let's say that in February of 2026, you take and you pass the system-based assessment. You're going to get a badge that says basically your certification status has been updated. The badge would say now the year of 2026 on it instead of 2025. Okay. Now, failing the new exam would not change your status because technically you're still certified based under the rules of the old theoretical exam. So, let's say you took the old theoretical exam, you passed it in November of 2025. You're not going to be due to have that expire until November of 2026. So let's say you took the new system-based exam and you failed. You're still technically certified until November of 2026. However, if you did not take it again until let's say December of 2026, it would expire. Okay? So your badge would not be updated to reflect this year's date because of course you haven't passed the new one. Now, if you were certified, but you let your certification status expire, passing the new exam will generate a new badge with this year's date. So all of the badges that you get for the new system-based assessments that get released end of January are going to be 2026 because they're always based on the year that you got it in. Failing the new exam, of course, would not generate a new badge. Okay, let's take a look at the rest of these questions here. That's actually all I have for you in terms of content. Is a camera necessary for the exam? No, not for us. Let's say that you took the exam for positioning SAP Business Suite, which is a totally different course, because they use the scenario-based assessments using this tool called Udly, which has the AI avatar. For those, yes, you do need to have your camera on because you're basically talking, having a conversation with this AI avatar. At this point in time, we're considering it for the future, but at this point in time, we have a pure system assessment. So they are exercises in a live system. That's it. No cameras necessary. You're just doing exercises like creating business roles, spaces and pages, integration, migrating data, doing customization. You're just doing things in the system. No cameras necessary. Okay. Question, will the Stay Certified assessment at some point also change to the new format? That's the plan, but there's no deadlines on that in the future. So we're not entirely sure. We're just focused on getting this batch of system-based assessments published first, and then we're going to look at that in the future. That's probably going to be like 1 to 2 years out. So for now, there's still going to be multiple choice for the Stay Certified assessments. And then guided exercises during the exam, is that similar to the practice system exercises? Yes, they're quite similar. Okay, and then the exam will be non-proctored. So they're not proctored by a person, they're proctored by like APIs, essentially. So they're still being proctored in a way. We're still validating what you're doing in the system, but we're using a set of different APIs to basically pull the data to verify, did you create this role? Did you assign these business catalogs? Did you set up these restrictions? So we're still validating what you're doing, but we're using APIs to do it instead of a person. And it is open book and so we don't care, honestly, if you go to the help portal and you look up how to do something, because in real life, if you are implementing for a customer, real life is open book, right? In real life, you'll be able to go to the help portal and look up how to do something. The tricky thing is you obviously would want to show up and be quite prepared and confident in the system because you only have 3 hours. And we've had we had a group of internals test this already, and they took around like 2-ish hours. So it takes some time to go through each one of those steps. You don't really have a whole lot of time to be looking up how to do things. So you'd want to show up already knowing how to do those things in the system. Okay, and then how can a candidate use Joule for Consultants? Joule for Consultants requires a license, so that would depend on whether or not your organization has purchased a license for Joule for Consultants. Basically, it's a tool that the organizations would purchase and then hand out access to the individual employees. It's similar to any other license where you're purchasing a certain number of user seats who can access that particular AI chatbot tool. So Joule for Consultants actually opens up in its own browser window. It's its own, just like a chat GPT is going to be in its own browser window. Joule for Consultants would do the same thing. So I would ask your manager if perhaps your organization's purchased Joule for Consultants. With Joule for Consultants, it's only been around for like about less than a year, I would say. So we're still pretty early with that. We have a few early adopter customers, but I would be surprised if like all of the consulting firms have purchased it at this point. I know a few have already, but um, I would ask your manager if you have access to that internally. And then does it consume an exam attempt? Yes, each time you press the button. So once you go back here and you press this button to confirm completion of an exam attempt, that's going to consume an exam attempt. Okay, then will the knowledge badges for line of business areas also be renewed after each release and need to be renewed once a year? Yes, you will also be able to maintain certification with those. So the sort of like the stay certified assessments, you also get those, even though it's not classic certification, you still get those assessments where you can renew your knowledge. Those like 8 to 10 question assessments still get released. Okay, and then does the Stay Certified test consume one of the 4 attempts in the subscription? Oh, Stay Certified. No, it does not. So Stay Certified is an assessment that is just done through the learning website. If you go to manage certification, take assessment, it's just an 8 to 10 question multiple choice. It does not consume an actual exam attempt. An exam attempt would be if you're doing a system-based exam. So for like what we talked about with S4 Public Edition, sourcing and procurement, sales, financial accounting, or let's say you did a scenario-based assessment like positioning SAP Business Suite. That is a scenario-based assessment. Or business technology platform. You know, it's a specific certification. Like if it says certified associate or certified specialist, that's going to take up an exam attempt. Okay, since S/4HANA Cloud Public Edition implementation consultant certification is open source and AI usage is allowed, can I use any other resources online like Google searches or other AI? Yes, we are not using anything to check and see what you're doing behind the scenes. All we know is what the APIs are able to pick up based on what you're doing in our system itself. Okay, so you can use any resource that would help you. And then do we need to complete all the exercises in 3 hours? Yes, you do. 3 hours is your time limit. You absolutely have to complete all the exercises in 3 hours. How is the score distributed, calculated? I'm actually not sure how much information we're going to end up publishing about that. It basically it depends on the like each validation checkpoint is an API that's running a check in the system. So in total, I think we have like 7 or 8 different validation checkpoints for 6 exercises. So some exercises have more checkpoints than others. I'm not sure if we're going to end up actually publishing and showing you how much different exercises are weighted. Um, but basically, I mean, the goal would be to complete all the exercises because each exercise that's there is something that you're going to have to do in real life for an implementation. You know, this is very much meant to be based on what you're going to be responsible for in real life. Okay, and then can a candidate take the help of a person who already passed the exam and has expert knowledge? I mean, there's no way for us to know if that's happening. So, in theory, yes. And then how can I schedule an exam, for example, to pass the certified associate for S4 private edition for production planning and manufacturing? I'm not sure if that I don't think there is a specific certification for that. Usually for private cloud, you would take the foundational knowledge, which that also is due to be released at the end of January. So you'd be going through the Certified Associate for S/4HANA Cloud Private Edition. That is, excuse me, that is also a system-based assessment that will be released end of January. That's going to be pretty heavily based on the system exercises that are in the course as well. Then, because private cloud is basically the same thing as S4 on-premise, to specialize in a line of business, you would then complete the on-premise training course. So there should be like an S for HANA. If it just says S for HANA, usually we mean on-premise. So there should be an S for HANA for like production planning and manufacturing course. And since that's on the on-premise side, that's kind of out of my scope. And I'm not sure if they would have a certification for that. So you would definitely want to take the Certified Associate for S4 Private Edition. I can send you the link to the learning journey for that. This is the link to the learning journey for Private Edition. which should include the certification exam link in there, which again is not live yet, right? Because it's also going to be released end of January. And then will we be able to use the session recording? Yes, actually, if you go to learning.sap.com, so by session recordings are usually uploaded to the system about 2 days after a session occurs, just because this is currently a manual activity. So if you've registered for the session, we have your email address, which means you get an email about 2 days from now. So on Wednesday of this week, you should get an email that says, hey, thanks for participating in this live session. If your session was recorded, here's the link to where that recording would be. It's actually just going to link you to the My Learning area and then the live sessions area of learning.sap.com. So in the live sessions area, you can see the sessions that you've completed. And if there is a recording that's connected to it, there will be a button that says open or launch recording. So I would say wait for the email because the email will, as soon as the email comes, it means that the recording has been uploaded and they give you the direct link in the email. And then if we refer to any open sources during the exam, does the API deduct any scores? Nope, because there's no way for us to track that. All we can track is what you're doing in the certification system. And again, it's meant to be based on real life. You know, in real life, when you're implementing for a customer, you have access, you know, real life is open source. You can Google, you can use Joule for Consultants, you can use Chat GPT or, you know, the different AI tools. You know, real life allows you to use those things, so you're going to be allowed to use those in this exam as well. Okay, I think the last question, how do I identify the improvement areas after you fail the certification exam? It kind of depends. So for our system-based assessments, it usually does not give you details about what you did not pass. For the other type of assessments, like the scenario-based assessments, which we are not using, they usually give you more detail. So for us, for the system-based assessments, it's usually not going to tell you what the problem was. I would say the most common reason why the APIs mark things as incorrect is because of spelling errors. So again, I would say if the exercise says this is how you name the project manager business role when you create it, make sure that underscore is there. Make sure that you're not missing a space here or there, right? So I would say that's probably, you know, if you feel like you knew how to do the exercises, that's probably why an API failed, is because it checked something, it was looking for an underscore, and you didn't have a space between those two letters at all. Okay. So that's the most common reason that catches people up. And then in the live sessions, will we be doing hands-on? So I assume you're asking about these live sessions. These are not, I mean, you could be doing hands-on in the background if you wanted to, I suppose. I will be doing hands-on in terms of I will be demonstrating things, especially as soon as we get into things like setting up the project in Cloud ALM, using central business configuration to activate content, preparing for, you know, the majority of these I'm usually demoing across the different systems that you would be using in real life, and I'm trying to show you the activities that you'd be doing in real life for an actual implementation. So I will be demoing things in a live system, but it's not like we'd be doing exercises together. Okay, and then can we copy paste a name as per the question to avoid a mismatch? You can copy paste from the PDFs. However, you just want to make sure that you swap out the group numbers whenever it says to enter your group number, which is very similar to the exercises. You know, that's how we keep track of you for the exercises too. Make sure that you just replace the group number with your actual group number so that it's associated to you as the person taking the assessment. All right. I think that's all for our questions. I will send you on your way. We've got some silly fun facts here. This is the final last call for questions. If anything else comes up, we're already over the hour, so I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. And last call for questions. If you've got everything you need, feel free to drop off the line. This slide deck that I used for today's session will also be sent out about 2 days from now in that email that says Thanks for participating in the session. Here's the link to the recording, and also here's the link to the teaching materials from the instructor. Okay. All right.